How
All
is
right.
my audio quality, by the way? I'm just using my camera mic. Okay.
It's good. I'm just using my this mic, but Beth said I look cooler if I have a little mic. I look like I'm talking to the mic like it's real. Sorry.
Howdy, welcome to the Idea to Impact podcast. Today we have Christopher Scotti, who is a serial entrepreneur and longtime supporter of the innovation ecosystem here in Texas. He has over 25 years of experience founding, growing, and coaching emerging technology companies through relationships with private businesses and economic development organizations, as well as government and higher education institutions. His biggest strength is the ability to play in both the technical and the business worlds and act as a connector between the two. You're really going to enjoy this one, so let's get started. Well, hey, welcome back to the Idea to Impact podcast. My name is Beth Durmeyer, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Jack Manhire.
And today on the show, we have Chris Scotti, who works with Tees here at Texas A&M, and his mission is to really support Tees in commercializing some of the amazing technology that they have coming out of that program. But more importantly, he's a great friend of ours. We have worked with Chris Scotti and his colleague, Lene Scroggins, on what is called TNVC, which you're going to learn all about during this podcast. So welcome to our show, Chris. We're really happy to have you.
Great to be here.
And yeah, so we're going to start with the question that we like to ask our guests, and that is, when is the first memory that you have of being, or first taste that you got of being an entrepreneur?
Ooh, man, that's a good one. I didn't know it at the time, but, when I was growing up in, let's say, end of elementary school, beginning of middle school, we lived on a golf course in California. And my dad used to give me some of his old golf balls that he'd win in some tournament or whatnot. And I would go out and sell them at the tee box. It was shortly, like a little distance from our house. And so I got my first taste of entrepreneurship by selling golf balls and using that money to kind of go out and get some cool things of my own. So it was a neat little experience, and it kind of gave me the kind of beginning of the entrepreneurial bug that has permeated the rest of my life.
Wow. How long did you do that?
Man.
And how old were you actually when that happened?
This is old enough that it's foggy, it's like,
yeah, right.
It's fog. I would say it had to have been maybe 4th grade through 6th grade type of years.
Okay. Yeah.
The 10, 11, 12, that sort of era, but really I didn't realize, I'd done other things like selling lemonade and, helping at garage sales and doing other various, normal type of what I think was normal entrepreneurial things to do with your family. But what made me realize that I actually had an entrepreneurial bug was in high school, I worked at Best Buy. All right. And so if you remember, Best Buy, this is like pre-Geek Squad days. I was helping them sell computers because I had kind of figured out that was an area that I had a interest and skill set in. So I was helping them sell computers, and they didn't have the ability to help people set up their computers or get work done on them or learn how to use them or whatever. So I recognized that opportunity, and so I essentially started moonlighting for Best Buy to go into people's houses and set up the computers that they just bought. And then I started going back and teaching them how to use them and hooking up to the internet, which was much more complicated in those days, and getting people to actually use the stuff that they were buying in the store. And that's where I realized that I really enjoyed helping people make an impact with technology, utilize the technology that they had available to them. So that was kind of where I actually started implementing that entrepreneurial bug.
So you're like proto Geek Squad, but on your own side. That's pretty cool.
Rogue
Yep.
Geek Squad.
Yeah, right. Back when Geek Squad really, you had when being a geek cost you something, right? That's
exactly.
now it's cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. I wonder if they came up with the idea from you somehow.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure if I'd worked there for very much longer, I probably would have gotten in trouble because my business eventually started taking off, and then they started doing in-house work. So yeah,
Right.
that's
Oops.
Yep.
Conflict.
Well, that's cool because so you're kind of on a different side of, what we've had on this show, where, we've had quite a few inventors on here who are the ones doing the research, but you're on that. I mean, you're on their side, but you're kind of in a different position where you're not the person that's creating the inventions, but you're the person that's helping them make the impact. I think we've kind of learned throughout this podcast that you can't do it on your own.
Sure.
And that's one of the themes of TNVC, right? Is that you need networks, you need support. So I'm just curious. I think everyone kind of has a different definition of what the word entrepreneur or entrepreneurship means. So what does that word mean to you?
To me, it's identifying. It's a whole suite of things for the reality, but to try and distill it down, to me, it's identifying a gap or a need in the market, and then coming up with something new to fill it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go invent this widget in your garage. It might be recognizing that there is a technology that might have another purpose or might be emerging from a piece of research that you can then plug in to fill that gap out in the marketplace.
Interesting.
And you're the entrepreneur in residence is one of your probably many titles. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, I fill a few different roles.
And bringing that to Texas A&M, how did you find Texas A&M, especially on the in the T's arena where you're working? Were there gaps even within the education of entrepreneurship that you had to fill as that entrepreneur in resident, as that instructor, that mentor, et cetera? And tell us about what that landscape looked like and maybe what it looks like now.
And I had such a weird trajectory to end up where I am. It's
okay.
Crazy. And I'd say I didn't find this. This found me. I mean, if you'd asked me 10, 15 years ago, as I was wrapping up my first company, my first computer company, and I was wrapping up and selling it, if you'd asked me if I thought I was going to end up working for the university, the state government, effectively, I would have said, no way.
Right.
Heck, I didn't finish going to school. All right. I started my company while I was going to college. I mean, I've finished it since, but yeah, I didn't finish my degree at A&M. I started my company while I was going to school at A&M, and then left school to run my company because I couldn't succeed at both. And so I saw my trajectory at that point as being, I'm going to go start more companies. I'm going to go help other people start. Right. And I had, this idea of being a consultant and helping other people do things with their ideas. And yes, I saw that at the point, but I thought I was going to do that like externally. And I started to help on the periphery of Texas A&M in the days where there really was no new venture program. So where tech commercialization would identify something, a technology that might need some external help, whether that be funding or leadership or just, hey, let's do some market discovery and figure out where this thing would plug in. I would go in and try to help those pre-companies in many cases, often led by really smart people that had no idea how to run a business. And I'd go in and help them try to navigate those waters. And as I was doing that, I ended up doing a few different things, running a community incubator and also helping to run the Aggie Angel Network, which is our kind of in-house or affiliated angel network for technology startups. And I ended up in a discussion with one of the angel investors that was there, who also happened to be employed by TEAS, right? Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station. And he's a commercialization rock star in his own right. That's Duncan Maitland.
Right.
Dr. Maitland has spun out several companies. The most prolific is something called Shape Memory Medical, which has now gone on to raise 20 plus million and has just had its first aneurysm fighting technology get FDA clearance. So awesome guy to kind of, have approached me about this idea of, taking what we recognized in Aggie Angel Network, which was, hey, we got all these great technologies emerging out of the research that we do here, the almost $1 billion worth of research that we do here. But we don't have the ability to get these technologies out of the lab and ready to pitch these like real world investors. There's this gap. So these really neat technologies, and there's this opportunity to get funding from Aggie affiliated investors, but getting those companies ready to pitch was a real issue. So at AAN, we started a program coaching those companies maybe 6 weeks to 6 months out from needing funding. And in multiple conversations with Duncan, we realized that we really needed to reach further back in the life cycle, even to the point where engaging with some of these faculty members in the lab and helping them identify the types of technologies or in the directions of their research early on in the process, getting them to start thinking about what is the potential market impact or interest in this technology before I even decide what pathway to go down. And he had come from the West Coast and saw some competitions that are similar to what eventually became TNBC here. And he hired me to come in and basically take that 6 week to 6 month coaching, predecessor coaching to these new companies and stretch it out to more like that 6 month to 2 years ahead of when that company needed money.
Okay.
And so that's what I was hired to do under that entrepreneur in residence hat. My role has morphed multiple times. And I started out doing this in a part-time way because I was also running a consulting business on the side and helping several of our spin-outs in a professional role. And it's slowly grown to be a full-time position. It still includes some of that, but it's more of a matchmaker role now, helping these companies, find the folks that can meet their needs.
So going back, so you said that, you left school and started your own company. And what was your company? What was the technology that you were doing?
So it's nothing glamorous. I quickly figured out I did not. I actually learned very much later on, I'm not the guy that creates stuff. All right. I'm the guy that can translate between the really smart technical guys into something that the rest of the business world understood.
That's such a valuable role, though. So valuable and needed. Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time. All right. I thought, I know computers. Okay. So I can help. Well, what I did, in my dorm room at A&M, it was a whole lot of working with students and faculty, helping them build computers, get connected to the network, troubleshoot things. This was before really A&M had its own help desk. It just started to get networks in the dorms, no Wi-Fi, late 90s. Yep. And I turned that into a business, ended up hiring a few other students. In fact, one of the neat little side stories is that the residence housing, what it was called then, I have no idea what it's called now, actually was referring students to me to help get them connected to the network.
Awesome.
And so for a while, they were referring people to me in my own dorm room to get, do this professional work. Meanwhile, but I, having this entrepreneurial bug, seeing the opportunity, I started putting up signs. I was advertising my dorm room phone number, and then I hired my first couple of employees. And that's when I got a call from one of the folks higher up in the administration and said, look, we appreciate what you're doing. We've been happy to refer you this stuff. This has grown beyond what is okay to do on campus.
Right.
And that's what I was mad at the time, but honestly, it was exactly the kick in my rear that I needed. It forced me to go off campus and really get my first, invest in my own company and invest a lot more in my time. And that's kind of the story went down the road. I worked from my own home office for a long time, then opened a retail location in early 2000, and then grew it up for the next half a dozen years or so until I sold it in 2006.
Wow.
So there are.
You probably helped me with my dorm room because.
And you asked kind of what our company did. That was the early days. What we recognized fairly quickly was that there was honestly a lot more money, a lot more of an opportunity in the B2B space.
Okay.
That was helping other small businesses, think mom and pop shops that might have
Right.
multiple locations, doctors' offices, clinics, that kind of thing, going in there and helping them navigate this technology landscape. And so I realized that I could hire the technical folks to do the back office stuff, all right, a lot better than I could ever hope to do. I mean, but I could speak their language on top of the new technologies and pieces of software that were available, trends like navigating software out to the internet from, client server-based stuff in offices. So I would then go out to the business owner or the executive at these small to medium companies and really dive into their workflow and find out what made their business tick, what was holding them back in terms of their office processes, and then talk to them in terms that they understood and how they could use technology to speed up those processes. And that's what our company did for its most profitable years, where we grew very quickly, won a few Aggie 100s, and started helping folks even beyond this immediate region that we live in now.
So we've talked about iCORE on this show before, and I know that iCORE, a lot of iCORE, from my understanding, is about customer discovery. And I hear when you're telling this about your experience, you're taking customer discovery to a whole new level. You're not just discovering, who your customers are, and in a more general sense, will they buy my fishing lure? But you're going into each and every client and say, what are your specific needs? Let me understand your business so that I can then be a translator. That's what I hear you saying, right? And that translation seems so critical. Was that seen as a value add when you were doing that as a business, being able to translate like that?
I'd love to tell you, yes, it's great.
Yeah.
These companies really appreciate what we're doing. It was hard to enter new relationships with that mindset, new client relationships.
Okay.
Because, so much of what they knew about technology was what was being sold to them.
Right.
It's like you get sold a widget, all right? You get sold a computer, and oftentimes people were buying technology like that then sat in a closet, effectively, or that was totally underutilized. So a lot of what I had to do, which was a great precursor to my experience with iCORE, so remind me to get back to that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
this idea of going in and understanding the model, the client model, what they, their business model is so extremely important, because then you can pick the pain points, all right, and cherry pick the technologies to fix those pain points. So then you're not selling someone a new computer. You're not selling them, some piece of technology. What you're doing is selling them a solution to their particular pain point. And you can start talking about results and actual impact then, dollars savings in terms that they understand, instead of, hey, buy this piece of equipment or get this piece of software and then figure out how to use it.
And was that a harder sell? I'm trying to remember back to my tax attorney days when I had my own practice, and I always thought, similar to what you're saying, that it would be better if I were to get in there and help them fix their long-term problems, in addition to their problem with the IRS that they're having, for instance, right now. So I'd say, let's do what I called an investigation. Let me investigate what's going on internally, with the government, et cetera. And they'd say, no, I need you to fix this problem now, this problem. I said, okay, great, we're going to fix that, but let me go back. So I always found it to be a harder sell, even though it was better value. Did you find something similar to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, listen, you get brought in more often than not to put out a fire.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you go in to put out a fire, but really where the long-term business relationship is in fire prevention.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so you go in, you learn the business model. Maybe you learn it through that baptism by fire. You're going in and putting out the immediate need, taking care of that immediate problem, and establishing some rapport with them, so that you can turn around and help them plan to prevent the next one.
Right.
And once you have some credibility there, that helped a lot. It was extremely hard for us to go in and solicit clients out of the blue, cold call, which was part of my job that I created for myself, to go and cold call somebody that things are going well with technology in their business. Why would they want to listen to you? What's better? It was much easier to go in when there was a problem, and solve it, and then talk to them about you preventing that next time around.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so
you wanted. Sorry, I'm sorry. You said about iCORE. I just wanted to bring you back to iCORE.
Yeah. Back to that. iCORE. I learned a ton from iCORE. I mean, my exposure to NSF's iCORE program was a really eye-opening experience for me in many ways. In making me realize that some of these experiences that I had in the business world myself were applicable to this pre-company, really nascent technology emerging from a lab ecosystem. Because what you had to do, what really my role as an entrepreneurial lead when helping these iCORE teams, I'd go in with this, with these really smart faculty researchers or postdoctoral graduate research types that really had only thought in terms of their lab, very little in terms of what the market. And what I had to, in many cases, force them to do was to get out and actually talk to potential customers. Talk to maybe start out with who they thought the potential customer was, but actually realize that, I remember back to a battery technology, they thought they were going to be, going into electric vehicles. Well, they went out and talked to electric vehicles. No, that wasn't who was really interested in their, lighter weight batteries, this new technology. And so they went and talked to a few different types of battery users and realized that lighter weight batteries didn't have applicability to things that sat on the ground. It had applicability to things that flew. So we iterated that down and ultimately figured out that commercial drones were the application in that scenario. Totally different market than what they had originally envisioned, and that had some very specific needs. And the cool thing about iCORE, that I'll just add in here, what sold me on that idea of a program was not that, hey, we solved or we figured out a market for this specific product. It was that on the plane ride back, this is where the light bulb went off for me. I turned across the aisle to the PI, the principal investigator, guy who invented this battery technology, and said something to him about how I was sorry to hear that his technology was a no-go, because he had learned that his technology needed some more work in the lab, figuring out how it could be mass produced before he could pursue that commercial drone or whatever market. And I'm sorry about that, but hey, let's talk about next steps. And he's like, no. I'm going to think about next steps in this, but now I saw him working furiously away on his laptop. I'm working on a new research proposal for a related technology. Now, instead of me thinking about what I want to research in the lab, I'm now thinking about what the market's going to actually use. All right.
Right.
And that's the real value of programs like this. It's not just to solve today's problems, but it's also to kind of change that culture around entrepreneurial commercialization, so that the future of the research, or at least a portion of the research that we do at tier one research institutions like ours, is thinking ahead to what that market impact for that technology is.
And so often, I know in academia, and all of us have been within it long enough to probably pick up on this, is that we are, with academic freedom and everything, which is, I stand by all of that, I support it, but it also has some baggage that suggests I'm not going to let anybody dictate what I'm going to be working on, including the market. Right. And the market might even be some type of dirty money thing. So I'm going to do a pure thing over here. And then to have that paradigm shift that you experienced, Chris, on that plane, to say, wait a second, not only is it not like a dirty thing, but I can actually be doing some real good here. Otherwise, this pure thing is going to be in my closet somewhere, right? I could actually have a real impact on society. That's pretty cool to be able to see the PI come to that conclusion on his or her own, as opposed to preach it, right?
Right. Because I think some faculty might never get to that point, you know?
So there's a story that I tell when I get in a conversation with faculty, you know, that I see it going that direction, where it's like,
Right.
you know, don't tell me about my baby, you know?
Right.
And you got to remember, these are folks many times have been working on their baby, working on that technology for dozen years or more. I mean, they are the
career.
expert around that widget.
Right.
So early on, after I sold my company and was starting to figure out where my place was in this ecosystem, I had a client that had come up with a technology that could deliver chemotherapy drugs in a very unique way to cancer patients, all right, in a way that would not cause those very toxic drugs to go throughout the person's body. All right, very cool. All right, and this guy, with the inventor, also was the head of the company, and had a very particular way that he saw this unfolding and going out to the market. And I won't get into all the details, but basically our relationships unfolded to the point where I made a recommendation to them that they hire an external CEO and allow that person to explore additional markets and figure out some new ways to get funding into their company. And the researcher, who was not a faculty member, this was someone external to A&M, that researcher, that inventor, decided, you know, no, I have this particular way I see this unfolding. I want this to impact, in his case, pediatric market first, and which was laudable. I mean, he saw a real need. I mean, it was a very compassionate, I want this to affect you know, these
For
folks
kids.
first. Yeah, kids with cancer. I mean, how do you argue with that story? All right. But he couldn't raise enough money around it. And it's been almost 20 years. And that technology is still effectively sitting on the shelf. All right. Because they couldn't raise the funds around it and get it out to market in that initial market. Now, since they've started to do some things that have gotten them some funding in other markets, and the company has changed, I believe it's going to be successful. But it took them a really long time. And I guess the lesson that I'm trying to impart through many of the different things I do, but especially through the story when I'm talking to faculty, is that you can have 100% of something that sits on the shelf. You've got that now. You keep going down that path. I believe chances are you're going to keep that 100% of that piece that sits on the shelf. Or you can have 20% or half of, or whatever the split is, of a much bigger pie that actually makes an impact in society, that you know, is viable and goes out to market. And you play a role in as part of the team if you want, but that you give up some of in order to actually increase the size of that pie and ultimately that impact on society. And so I use variations of that story and that philosophy, if you will, in many of the different things I do.
That reminds me of something similar I saw. It was actually, Chris, when you had invited, I was lucky enough to be invited to one of your dinners around the Texas New Venture Competition, the TNVC, that I'm sure we'll talk about in detail a little bit. And I was talking to a founder who had technology that was successful. And he said, when I founded this company, I knew that, hey, I'm the guy to be the CEO. I'm the leader. I'm the one who created the stuff. So I don't need any help with that. He goes, and then I found how hard it was to get us to, let's say, 8 million, you know, and 8 million raise. And I really now needed to go to the next, you know, that next level, that next tranche. And he was going, I was so foolish, you know, and now we're doing a CEO search. You know, I realize it takes a year. I got to get the right person to come in here. But there's so much of those experiences that you're providing. I think the stories that you're telling are based on the experiences you're providing that are teaching people, you know, 50, 60 plus years old, new lessons on how to make that impact in society. I just find that to be great to see scales fall off eyes, to say, in order to get where I want to go, I've got to sometimes step back in an industry, meaning academia, where I've been pushed my entire career to be upfront,
Yes.
to be the first person on the paper, right? To be the PI, to be the first to make tenure and all that. So that's really an interesting transition.
Very much so. I know about. I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
We were sitting at the same table there.
Right.
And it's really neat to see those kind of light bulbs go off, hear about those stories. But one of the things that's frustrated me also, though, is like those stories, okay, where you hear about these commercialization successes, historically, they've happened sort of out of, I was going to say luck, but more ad hoc. It's like these one-on-one type of relationship.
It wasn't planned, right? It wasn't.
No, even that one I was talking about before with Dr. Maitland and Shape Memory, and I could rattle off a half a dozen more cool successes. Glad that they worked out this way, but you know, they've happened because of these one-on-one sort of conversations, and a fair bit of luck as well.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to do now with what is next in this entrepreneurial commercialization evolution that's going on right now is to try and make this process more systematic. All right. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of what iCORE is trying to do. It's certainly what some of the programs that I'm involved in, like TNBC, are trying to do. Really, where we are, you know, using what we have learned perhaps from these successful case studies, and then turning that into an educational process and a methodology that other academic researchers can then follow and see that their peers have had success with this. And we have real data behind this. You know, we're not just trying to take their baby away from them. We're showing them how they can increase the odds of them actually making an impact with their technology. So making that whole process much more systematic and increasing that flow, that pipeline of technologies flowing out of our labs and our research efforts is really the end goal.
I guess I just have a hard time like visualizing how, how can it be systematic when I feel like everybody's, the technologies are all different. Everybody's story is a little bit different, but you're saying that, yes, that's true. However, when it comes to the business side of things, there are certain things that are systematic that have to be done that, need to be taken care of to move forward.
Systematic is an easy way to explain this. It's a kind of, it's easy, much easier to talk about than it is to implement, but I can demonstrate through an example. All right, so this is particularly applicable to faculty who love data, all right, and they hate to be told what to do. All right, so you go in and we've looked at now 6 years of our new venture competition. All right, and we look back at the data that we have, and we know certain characteristics about the companies that have participated, both those that have failed and those that have succeeded, both in our competition and then beyond. And we, asked some questions, almost like an interview at the beginning, about what's the status of their technology, who is their management team, and learn a little bit about those management team members. And one of the things that we can do now is go back and match up those characteristics. In this case, do they have a management team that is of more than one? All right. And of that management team, does it have both technical and business elements? All right. And we know that more than 90% of the finalists, all right, these are the top 6 in the state of Texas, top 6 science and engineering based companies in the state of Texas. More than 90% of those have what we term as a diverse management team. right? And so when you can take statistics like that and then make that a milestone, all right, when you're talking to a research team around that's interested in commercializing their technology, and tell them, all right, at some point, before you go and raise private funds, before you go out and reach, get enough money to be able to take your technology closer to market, you're going to need to seriously consider following in the footsteps of these other companies that have proven that this methodology works. And you show them the numbers, all right? You show them, hey, this isn't just, Chris Scotti giving you this advice, out of his own interests. This is proven. Hey, we've got a bunch of data now that shows if you do these things, you will increase your likelihood substantially of being able to make impact with your technology. And it's implementing other things like that, other tools like using the lean canvas model, which iCORE has fully embraced, and now the venture world has as well, going through and filling different milestones where you're not only thinking about the progression of your technology, but you're also thinking about how is your technology going to scale? How is it going to be manufactured? How is it going to get to market? Who is the customer? It's not always the same person as the user of your technology, who's writing you the check, sort of conversations. Right. What regulatory issues do you need to think about? All those different hurdles. And if you can put those into a incubation or acceleration process and actually have these elements, it's not a one size fits all. So, obviously, medical devices are going to need to think about different regulatory things than a cybersecurity technology, but you have these different checkboxes at the different stages. All of a sudden, hey, we're talking about a system here. We're talking about something where we've already thought about the potential pitfalls. We've already thought about the solutions to those pitfalls, and we can show you here are how other predecessors, peers, have navigated these pitfalls previously. And the idea here is to help more of these technologies get out to market, but there's a corollary. As you go through this process, you're also going to recognize the ones that are probably not going to make it. Right, all right. Right. And it's always hard to hear that your baby's ugly, Yeah. But that is a very valuable thing to hear. All right. Because it's freeing in a way, because, all right, instead of going 3 more years trying to pursue this, this technology, this potential opportunity, you can now take what you've learned, go back and pivot, and not invest your energy in something that's ultimately not going to be a success. You realize that early, you save money and you save a whole lot of time.
And I remember Omar talking about, Omar Hakim, about how, he's been involved with Aggie Angel investors, and talking about, they've had a guy that, he failed 5 times and he was on like his 5th company. But the guy, it almost gave him more clout because, they knew that he had learned something from each of those 5 failures, and he was continuing to push forward with new ventures and new technologies. But, you learn so much when you learn that your baby is ugly and that you can, pivot or move on to something else. Like there's value in that.
Oh, there certainly is. Yeah, it reminds me back of my my computer company days. The best clients were usually ones that had a failure already, right. With some other big box company or big computer maker, and it went south for whatever reason. The same is true here. The folks that have gone through and the process and fell out at some point are usually the ones that come back and be the more successful ones, because they're willing to listen and bring in the help that they need, and they know where their strengths are too, so they can focus on leveraging those strengths.